I don't know how active you have been in the past because of your athletic history, but one thing about me is that I personally have been a competitive athlete in multiple sports, including swimming and track and field, and also dancing. Now, I have been doing triathlon for an extended amount of time, and I realized that the human body is capable of indescribable performance and fortitude, and perseverance. Sometimes all it takes is just the will to keep going and a little bit of fitness, and a little bit of stamina. Now, that stamina can stem or come from not more than just, what can be sustained by 30 to 35 minutes of exercise every 2 days or every 3 days. Overall, it is recommended that 120 minutes should be the minimum of exercise that is high intensity enough. When we're talking about high intensity interval training, we're talking about periods of intense activity paired with intense rest. And these two types of states being switched constantly throughout the 30 to 35 minutes. Now, there is another type of exercise which is not really based on stamina, like high intensity interval training, for those who do not really prefer time consuming cardio or dancing or things like that, or even aerobic exercise of any sort, because high intensity interval training is good for your heart, so it's good for your cardiovascular system. You do not have to be a runner, for example, or a swimmer or a dancer to benefit from a high, like an elevated heart rate, basically. But another type of exercise is strength training, which is notorious for strengthening muscles and general core strength. It gives core support, which cardio can also give, especially if it is around activities like walking or very natural type of activities such as walking, hiking, Nordic walking, swimming, even, or just running. But strength training is very 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 different in that it can build muscle, but it cannot really impact the heart, and it can usually keep the heart rate low enough that it will not train you to become someone with higher stamina or more perseverance necessarily. Nevertheless, you will look more toned if you do that. And the name of the exercise is, you guessed it, resistance training. You can do resistance training with body weight, with extra added weights, or with resistance bands, or even with a partner, actually. The main thing about resistance training is the form of how you do any particular movement or exercise is really at the foundation of it being effective at all, because strength training can get a little bit addictive in a good way. It can feel a void for so many people in a very good way, but with that comes a huge responsibility of gradual increase in weight load and resistance. And if you are not as gradual, or if you start out with improper form, what you will find is, if you keep training without much warm up, or kind of like a sense of compassion to yourself, and a level of body awareness, you will either injure yourself as a potential possibility, or if not, you will kind of just lose interest in the whole activity, because you will get tired faster than you can even build muscle and strength. So strength training and resistance training in general is really good if you, for example, struggle with insomnia and anxiety, because the more cardio you do, on the other hand, the more anxious you tend to be. So, cardio is notorious for giving people kind of an escape, a break from life. And it also takes more time than just regular resistance training and the like, because the longer you do it, the more you can say that you have done, your cardio. If you do cardio for 10 minutes, that's most likely a form of a warm-up or like a cool down exercise. But if you do it for 30 minutes, now that is an exercise session. You can also implement sessions and periods of high intensity and low intensity, switching between the two into cardio workouts. But then we're talking about high intensity interval training. Cardio in general is not necessarily part of high intensity interval training, but high intensity interval training can be implemented into cardio. In general, I would say if it is either one or the other, high intensity interval training is a form of cardio. It resembles most like cardio, whereas resistance training and strength training are really completely differently focused on how the body is activated and how it moves. Because when we do any form of exercise, we can talk about two types of movements. The one is static and the other is dynamic. I haven't mentioned stretching exercises, by the way, which are healthiest when done in a static flow. So, not really as dynamically, which is why they are specifically known as what they are, such as yoga or regular, hyperbolic stretches. These types of movements, they really do not put a lot of strain on the body, but they prepare the body to have good form for future exercises that are not necessarily such low impact, but they also give a great body awareness. It is said among dancers that ballet is the basis of all dances, because it kind of prepares the foundation for learning any type of dance, because it gives you such a good body awareness, a good posture, core strength that no other dance can guarantee, because it is built so precisely for each muscle and for every area of the body. And it also focuses on aesthetics. Aesthetics are not important in strength training or resistance training or even in cardio, but strength training and resistance training is most tolerant of kind of focusing on internal sensations at the expense of having it look kind of aesthetically pleasing or show offy or things like that, which is why, you know, many people fail when they first go to the gym in their entire life if they do not start out with someone else's help. And usually that person is ideally someone in person, so not online. That's the best. But if they do not have that type of help in the beginning, you know, they kind of just go with the flow, and that is literally the opposite of what resistance training was intended to do, which is get you focused into yourself, and rather than focus on the, you know, beauty of the whole, you know, thing. Resistance is involved, so you have to resist, you have to kind of you know, become like almost like harder in a way, and you know, when you kind of break hardness down to specific parts of the body, that is when you talk about weightlifting or resistance training that is more than just body weight or, you know, regular, like, you know, calisthenics. Because the more weight you train with, the more responsibility you have to do the exercise with good form. I'm speaking from experience, by the way. And beyond that, be very conscious of just how much weight you are training with, because it can also happen that, for example, and by the way, this is very much encouraged, you miss periods of weeks or months from the gym, or you know, you stop weightlifting or resistance training for a while because you kind of just want your body to experience something else. That's okay. And then you go back to your regular exercise routine, but then you may discover that you cannot tolerate and train with the same weights that you used to be able to lift. And that's completely okay. Your body will probably recover and get used to the new heavier weights faster. However, in the beginning, you have to be humble and compassionate to yourself to start with the weights that you can tolerate and healthily work out with good form around. Because, again, the body needs a balancing period before it achieves anything, especially if it has achieved something prior to that kind of recovery period. So it's okay to take breaks, but usually, you know, for the human body, it's not very natural to take breaks in cardio or in high intensity interval training, which is why if you are just starting out with working out and you have basically never really worked out in your life, but mainly, you know, you are trying to focus on just getting a little bit more mobile, or you want to kind of lose a little bit of weight without going over the top, because you do not have much expertise in working out, then I would definitely recommend you start with high intensity interval training, because this is very, you know, kind to the body, no matter how you do it, unless of course you already have an injury. But if your body's healthy and you get, you know, to spend a little bit of time warming up before your exercise, which is just as important as the exercise itself, then you know, you get to be present with your body the most. Whereas if you do resistance training, again, that kind of requires a little bit of a good form, you know, a little bit of getting used to. But since the human body was made for running and for walking initially, and it is very good at those activities, the more you do these types of cardio type of workout, and, you know, even if you shift in intensity during the workout and execute a high intensity interval training, you will feel much more natural during the exercise. So definitely, if you can afford, because you feel comfortable doing that. And only between meals, so not right after meals, do those types of cardio, because it will be good for you. Again, for in the beginning, 30 to 35 minutes. Nowadays, people say that the more you walk, the better, but the 10,000 step era is over. We are completely okay if we walk no more, especially women around their periods, than 3,000 to 4,000 steps a day. That is an equivalent of around 3/4 of hour of walking. So basically 45 minutes of walking equates to around 3 to 4,000 steps generally. And that's sufficient. That's more than enough for the average person. And if they actually do that, they are way ahead of the average person, actually, because most people do not exercise every day, and even fit people do not need to exercise every day. Again, if you kind of got used to the cardio type of workouts, you can implement as a beginner some resistance training, starting with your own body weight, maybe using bars, getting creative on bars, like monkeys. But this can also give you a flexibility and kind of a body awareness to progress forwards in your workouts if you want to. Generally speaking, when you are doing either high intensity interval training or resistance training that is not based on just cardio in one session and that's it, then you want to focus, if again you're doing 30 to 35 minutes per workout, on doing 3 sets of 5 types of exercise each. I have found that if you stick to this rule, so 5 times 3, you will achieve of 30 to 35 minutes long exercise session. So for example, if I was to start today and do resistance training with just my body, or the most simple type of workout that I can just do at home in the comfort of my own home, I would start with warm-up, because warm-up is the last thing you want to skip as someone who moves their body, especially if you live in a colder climate, and especially if your parasympathetic nervous system is activated, which is highly descriptive of the digestive system working. So you do not want to work out after meals. If you have just eaten a whole bunch of food, a whole lot of food that is heavy enough, you kind of want to wait at least 15 to 20 minutes at least before you exercise after meals, even if it is a high protein meal and it is recommended that you exercise afterwards. So after warm up, that had included me moving my joints, every single one of them, properly and thoroughly, to kind of feel comfortable going forward, I would start with 30 seconds of plank holding. So for example, I put my elbows on the ground and I hold a plank for 30 seconds. Again, if I am a beginner, and then wait again 30 seconds or a little bit shorter, depending on how much I feel ready to move forward. Do a 30-second plank again, wait again, and then to do a 30-second plank again. That's one set of one exercise type. Now, I have done that's one type of exercise. I have done 3 sets I have 4 more to go. I can do another type of plank, for example, a side plank, and I can do the same thing with that. And then I can switch to the other side, and then I can repeat it in the same pattern. If I do that, I will have completed 3 types of movements in 3 sets each. I have 2 more to go. For example, I can, lift my leg and hold my arm, or hold my self in the air using a chair in order to balance myself, and in the other hand that is free, I can, for example, lift a very, very light weight, such as a 1 kilogram dumbbell or a plastic bottle filled with water, just to kind of experiment with how much I can tolerate and, resist and lift. And then I repeat it on the same side. I do 5 lifts of the weight each, and then I repeat the whole exercise 3 times on both sides, okay? To finish the workout, I can hold wall sit, for example, which is basically putting your back against the wall as if you were in a sitting position but without a chair, and then you hold that position for 30 seconds, or shorter, because that tends to be harder for beginners. Now that's just one workout, and that is completely enough, and that in and of itself activates autophagy, which is really good for you, and which is actually is necessary for your body to stay healthy. So if you do any shorter exercise, it's okay. Your body will already feel the results depending on your fitness level, especially if you have never exercised before. But if you do just 30 minutes of exercise per every 2 days or so, your body will completely be in its best shape, which I find kind of ironic, because many people tend to exercise so much to kind of work off all the calories they eat during the day. But the truth and the ideal golden line kind of lies between eating a diet that is moderate and made and consumed with common sense, and doing the bare minimum of physical movement. And you do not need to do much more unless you want to actually become a performance athlete or someone who is competitive in sports. Your body will manage its own weight. You do not have to over exercise to lose all the weight, because again, as an ex-athlete, as a former athlete, I found that there is a point at which, especially in endurance training, where the body says, I am switching to a different type of metabolism, I am switching to a different type of energy consumption in how I am function. And sometimes alternative medicine people or doctors can say that the body can switch to even consuming qi, which is life force energy, instead of even glycogen storages in the body. So what I mean by that is that you literally never know what your body is capable of, but generally speaking, it is true that you need food to survive, and you need a specific amount to function each day. That is just a fact, that everyone has a BMI, and which is a basic basal metabolic rate. So we all need a certain amount of calories each day. But one thing about the human body is that it can be super adaptive to circumstances and seasons and things like that, and general fitness level even. So even determined by age or influenced by age can happen things like, someone running a marathon on an empty stomach, so, or someone running an ultra, even though they have only been eating like oatmeal for the past week. So I do not want to exaggerate. I'm just saying that your body has storages. You do not have to worry about kind of losing it during your workout sessions, because if you feel like you are losing it in a way, first of all, either you are actually losing it, or you can choose to keep going and then become stronger. So, when it comes to exercise and kind of point where you start to get tired, that's when you get to make the decision, especially in cardio types of workouts. Okay, so do I want to get stronger? Do I need to get stronger? Or is what I am right now and is what I have accomplished until this point good enough? Because if it is, you definitely do not need to keep going, especially if your life doesn't depend on it. So 30 to 35 minutes of exercise per day is all it takes to maintain a healthy body weight, and activate autophagy, which by the way is also amplified by 15 minutes of heat exposure right after the exercise, or even during the exercise itself. And there are autophagy activating foods as well. All of this that I have detailed in this video or track is completely based on Naomi Whittle's 15-day program called Glow 15. And also I have been mentioning a lot of personal experience. I can back everything that I said up, and I'm sure that as long as it feels comfortable but still righteous, because it is necessary and it is necessary, it is probably the best thing you can do. So brace yourself and put on your gear, because the wilderness is waiting for you,